Hello and welcome back. Last week I went on to Faceplant Market Space and bought myself the cheapest left-handed Stratocaster I could find within 100 kilometers. For those of you on your way back to the 1950s, that would be 64 and a half miles. What we picked up was a left-handed Stratocaster that was made by Barracuda, along with a 15-watt practice amp. It was a V-Tone GM108. 3 books that were Hal Leonard's, but he didn't write them. They were written by a Will Schmidt and a Greg Koch. We also picked up the stand, 2 pick guards for right-handed Stratocasters, one of them still housing 2 pickups, a volume and a tone pot, along with the 5-way switch that does not have a knob. So for $100 Canadian, I don't think I did too bad. So today we're going to go over it and have a look, see what we really ended up with. So off to the bench. So I've always wanted a black Strat, but I never really wanted to go out and spend the money on a Fender or even a Squier for that matter. So I have a 1987 Squier Stratocaster that's in the cream white. Anyways, so when I found this one for such a fine dollar value, I decided why not, and it's $100. So we're gonna go over it, redo it. If it doesn't meet my fancy, then we'll pass it off down the road. But as I say, it is a Barracuda. My guess is it's 100% Chinesium. First thing I did when I brought it home was check the setup, and it turns out that at the 12th we had 3.5 millimeter. It's way too high. So we went over it, did a truss rod adjustment, which is in the neck of this one, and then afterwards went to all the little lugs on either side of the strings. If you tighten those, you're going to bring the saddle up. If you loosen them, you're going to drop the saddle down, which will drop the action as well. So we dropped it down, so now I'm at about 1.75 millimeters across. What we're going to do is go over it, see what it needs to get into perfect playing shape. What we did notice that is the frets are rather tarnished. So we're going to remove the strings, even though they're brand new strings. I've got another set. We can always use these as spares because whoever strung it tied slip knots or something like that in them. Yeah. Anyways, we're going to go over it. So what we'll do is remove all the strings. We're going to remove the neck because I'm going to be polishing the frets and probably filing down the edges, as there's some pretty sharp edges along that side. And seeing that we're going to be using 4/0 steel wool, there's going to be little metal shards flying all over the place. So we want to get these electronic things away from the neck so that we don't get any shards in here, because those pickups are magnets and you do not want small metal shards anywhere near your electronics. So that's what we're going to do today. I guess we will start with removing the strings. Now when you are removing the strings, you want to loosen off the skinny strings first. If we were just doing adjustments, we wouldn't be like removing the strings altogether. We'd be reusing them at any point. You want to take the tension off the skinny ones first, because if you take the tension off the larger, thicker ones, what's going to happen is you're going to put a lot more pressure on the skinny ones and you take a chance at breaking them. You don't want to do that. So, as I say, the first thing to do is remove all the strings. Now I see people snip across here and do that. That doesn't make any sense to me. You're just creating more waste. It's a waste of waste. But anyways, and if you're going to try and reuse them, well then obviously you don't want to do that. But away we go. So now we've removed all the strings from the headstock, and we will pull these strings out. What the cockadoodle are you hooked on? Oh, there we go. So this was obviously better done one by one instead of all at once because, well, each one has a big curly Q at the top. So we learn from our mistakes. Take the strings off one by one. Do not try and take them out all at once. And good gourd, Batman. I would edit this out, but you gotta know that sometimes you just gotta teach people by your mistakes. And that's what I've done here. Alright, I will leave this part in, but I'm going to pause it now because you don't want to hear the swear words I use as I'm trying to get these strings removed. I know some of you saw this coming. Why wouldn't you tell me? It's a good thing this is a cheap guitar and I don't really care. There, that was easy enough. So there, we removed all the strings, put them in a coil, put them in our little bin of recycled strings to go back to the axe shack next time we're up that way. So let's take another close look over here. Everything seems to be pretty standard. Oh, there is or was a sticker on the back of the headstock. It's been removed, so I don't know that we'll be able to read it. Maybe we'll take a look at that once we get the neck taken off. To take off the neck, we remove these 4 Phillips screws, but first we throw a big old bunch of sweatshirt material up so that when we put it down on the knobs, we don't bend or screw up the knobs. And with that, Phillips screwdriver. So I get the oldest Phillips screwdriver in the world. Used to be my dad's. Okay, so these come out rather tight. all the way. So my guess is the neck has never been removed. Just gonna loosen them all off a little bit at first. Now I've had the neck off of my Squire Strat many times, but this is the first time that I'm taking off this one. So what we do is remember everything that happens. For instance, this screw seems to be going in on an angle. It does not go directly straight down in. So we'll want to remember that. We'll double check the hole to see if maybe it was redone or not. Check the plate. It is just a plate, nothing inside there. A little bit of sawdust there. So let's put these screws back in the exact same holes they came out of, and probably if we were clever, we would take a Sharpie and put a little arrow saying up. So if I put a little arrow on the back of that, so we know it goes to the head. I don't know that it's going to be important now, but it might be important later. So now, very carefully flip this back over on its face. And before you remove the neck, pull it straight up, because we're going to be looking for whether or not there's any shims underneath. And there is no shims. There might be a little piece of wood in there that when you put it together, it is to keep the neck flat. This one has no shims, so we're good with that, and it was a nice tight fit. So first thing we have to do is take a quick look over the body. There is dust and dirt in there, so we're probably going to get ourselves a damp rag and take out the dust. And with our damp rag, we just go into that pocket to make sure we clean it up properly. Now with it being painted black, there's no markings on there that I can see, nothing engraved in the wood, nothing printed on it. Take a look at the back of the neck, check for any writing or anything that might be on there, and I see nothing. So we'll clean that off. Take a look down the neck, see that it's not warped or anything, and it doesn't seem to be. Now the nut, there's a little damage to the headstock right on the side where the tuners are here. You can see there's a little bit of damage there, but nothing too drastic. The nut is secure. Hard to say. It looks like it might have been glued in on after the fact, so my guess is somewhere damage popped off, somebody glued it back on. A couple of scratch marks on the headstock right beside the spindles, where obviously some strings or something has dragged across the finish. Tends to be like a satin finish on there. The neck itself is a little more glossy, but not much. Maybe it's just from use. A couple of little scratch marks, but nothing that's going to hamper the playability. Alright, so let's give this a little quick dust down with the damp rag while we have it out. And we'll set the body aside for now. We'll get to it later. And look over the fretboard. Fretboard looks like it's probably rosewood. And we'll be cleaning it off, but we'll clean it off after we work on the frets, because these have got to be polished down and sand and filed. So the first thing we're going to probably do is get out the tape. We're just going to use Green Gardener's tape, because basically all we want to do is just tape off anything that is not a fret. And after I did this the last time, I remembered that the first two pieces you want to do go down the length of the neck. The best way to do this would be not to pull the tape off first. So we're going to take the tape. We want to go just below the frets, but cover the side of the neck. And this is twofold. One, that we don't scratch the neck. And two, once we get all the other tape on, it will make for easy removal of all the side to side strips. Okay. Oh, drink. Don't you just love that noise? Okay, same thing. Oh, drink again. As I say, what we're just trying to do here is protect the side of the neck. Because we're going to be going over the ends of the frets with the file and going over the whole face of the frets with the 4/0 steel wool. You don't have to use the steel wool. People use Scotch-Brite or other things. That's fine. Whatever works best for you. I just happen to have a whole pile of steel wool, so. Alright, so there. So we're just going to go across here. Don't know why I'm doing off the nut, but I am. And then we just tape off to the fret so that the fret is exposed, but the fretboard is covered. Now I can see that the frets have been coated in something and the tarnish is coming off. That was too close. Turn it around and do the other side. So we're going to take our razor knife now and then just go along each edge of the tape, both sides, and just make sure that it's planted well against the fretboard and that the frets themselves are exposed. So is this guitar really worth the amount of labor it takes to go through and do all this? Probably not. Do I care? Probably not. So now the neck has all been completely taped off and only the frets themselves are exposed. I removed the blanket off of the board because I don't want to get little metal shards all through that blanket, because the blanket is for putting the guitars on to keep them from getting marked. So what we're going to do now is take our 4/0 or 0000 steel wool, grade steel wool. Some people want to use other things, that's fine. I have all kinds of this stuff, so that's what I'm going to use. And all we really do is go on the fret itself and polish it. Now, as I might have said before, these frets tend to have like a coating on them that is tarnishing and coming off, and that's why the strings were grabbing as they went across. This will remove that coating, I'm pretty sure. We're going to do a couple of them and then we will compare them to the other ones down the board. And this is why we have taped off the fretboard, because the steel wool going across the grain of the rosewood is not going to do it any good. And those are smooth as anything compared to the rest of them. Don't know if you'll be able to see on this camera because my camera really sucks, as you could probably tell by the close-ups of the fretboard and my taping. So what we're going to do is we're going to go across all the frets first off and polish them down. Get that surface mount off it as much as possible, and then we're going to take the file and clean off the edges, and then we'll come back and polish them down a bit more afterwards. So that's where we're going to go from here. And the other thing is, you're going to be doing this with metal and pushing on it with your finger. Put on some gloves. That'll keep you from getting any slivers, because you don't want a metal sliver in the end of your finger. Yes, that's gonna come up real nice. Okay, so now this is what the frets look like. If you just go back a couple of minutes in the video, you can see what they look like beforehand. I don't know if there's going to be much of a difference. It's hard to tell with this camera. But here is why you want to tape off or remove the neck from any electric guitar. This is all little metal shavings from here. Now, if you can imagine having the magnets from the pickups like just this far away from where you're doing this, that is a lot of gunk. So that is why you want to either tape off all your electronics or remove the neck. Even with an acoustic, having all that stuff lying around is going to take a chance when you try and clean your guitar of scratching the finish. Now, these frets came out fairly good. I know they are cheap frets and that, but considering what they were, all tarnished and with whatever coating was on, maybe a plastic coating to keep the metal good while it was in transit and being applied, I don't know. But either way, that is a heck of a lot better. So on to the next. After I clean up here, then we're going to take the file and just sort of round these edges here at the ends of the frets, because some of them down in this area especially are a lot more noticeable. So that'll happen as quick as. And so now on to the filing. I have a couple of files here that I bought just in the last year or so. This one has like grooves down through here where you can. This one doesn't really need that so much. What I need here is just the edges. So we're going to put that one away and get this one, which is a fairly small one. Now I have to say I have already taped off, but we're still going to use your finger to guide, just so that you don't go through the tape. And all you're wanting to do is just make sure that the little sharp edge is rounded just ever so slightly. Just so that when you're sliding your hand up and down the other side, it doesn't catch. As I say, all we're trying to do is just take the edge off the top, because the frets are curved this way, come up to the end, and then they're just shaved off on an angle down. So you still have a little bit of a edge right at the top. Okay, so there we go. We've done all the edges. Now we're just going to go over it again with our fingers. Close your eyes, because that might help you feel better. Not feel better, but feel more accurately. But as you're going along, if you feel any burrs, you can address them now, because once we get this thing put back together and restrung, that will be not too late, but later. So why, you may ask, am I spending couple $100 of labor on a $100 guitar? When I picked this guitar up, the gentleman I bought it from was rather adamantly, this is a student guitar, remember that. And I told him, I said, well, I do YouTube videos and I'll be, spending some time maybe upgrading it, and we'll make sure you blah blah blah. And then I brought it home and found 3mm action, tarnished frets. That would be the worst thing for a student, giving them a guitar that's way too hard to play and doesn't sound right. With 3mm of travel, what will happen is when you push down on this fret, every note you're going to get is going to go sharp, because you are pushing down, you're stretching the string. 3mm down is an amazing amount of bend in the string. Like, I played it and it sounded like crap. And I couldn't figure out why until I measured. And sure enough, 3 millimeters of travel. Just way too much. Okay, I'm just going to finish off a bit more here, and then we're going to look at the body. Or actually, I think what we're going to do is go over with the steel wool and polish them up a bit more. Like, we have refinished them good, but a little better was never too bad. We're making a guitar that's going to be, even if it does end up in the hands of a student, a guitar that will not disappoint, because beforehand it did. It disappointed. But I wasn't way too disappointed because, as I say, $100 for this guitar, a stand, 2 extra pick guards, even though they're for right-handed guitars, and the 3 books. It was still a very good deal. Okay, now one more quick brush up with the steel wool and onto the body. Okay, so we've got this thing just about as polished up and good looking frets as we can. So remember, I'm not a luthier. I'm just an old guy with too much time on my hands. So I'm learning how to maintain guitars, because I had a acoustic guitar for 30 years that was not set up right, and it had way too high action, and I think contributed to my carpal tunnel. So I have now gone to the point where I set up my guitars as best I can so that they are the easiest to play, which is why I have all my action at 1.75 millimeters. I don't use a pick, I don't strum, so there's not a lot of oscillation in the strings, and you can get really low action and not have the buzzing happen very easily. I still get buzzing, but I use it to my advantage. Anyways, next up, let's clean this up, remove the tape, and get onto the body. And now, like I was saying before, we put the 2 strips of tape up the side of the neck first. And guess why we did that? So that when we try to peel this all off, we can peel most of the tape. In an easy manner. Don't have to go through and pull every strip of tape off individually. And voila. One reconditioned Barracuda with the shiniest of frets. And I'm telling you, that's actually nice. They feel good. And being that it was a cheap guitar that was really hard to play, I have a feeling there's not that much usage on it. because the frets are not really worn at all. So on to part 2. Or we should probably condition the fretboard while we have it in this spot, and then all the oils can seep into it while we look over the body. So let's do that first. Ouch! And so now we will get the oil out. First thing we want to do is shake vigorously. Good enough. Now we will apply. It takes a couple seconds for this to really start pouring onto the fretboard. So we'll be going over it a couple of times. Not a paid promotion, in case you recognize the oil. I could have gone over it first and cleaned it off, but I can tell by looking at the fretboard that there's not a lot of DNA melded into it yet. It is still really good and clean, which is unfortunate because the guitar should be used, but at the same time, kind of glad this one wasn't used very well, because it would have really frustrated the person who owned it, unless that's why it was up for sale. The person I bought it off of wasn't the original owner. I'm just doing up there so that the complete fretboard gets juiced. Now I will hold it up to the light, see if there's any spots that really need a little extra, and there are. So let's go this way, and I can do up to the edges. Of the frets. Unless it's just seeping into the grain already, which it may very well be doing. But if it has seeped into the grain that fast, then it needs more. Down here doesn't really need as much because it doesn't get a lot of usage, but now let that seep in for a couple of minutes, and then we will wipe it off. Now I think I'm going to turn it over and take a real close look at the label to see the sticker that came off the back of the headstock, to see if I can read anything that was on there. And I've looked at it up close in the light, tried to see if anything, and I don't believe that is readable. All you can see is whatever kind of came through the sticker before it was removed. Can see a little bit of wording, but it's hard to decipher what it really means. Let me get my extreme glasses. I've got a couple of pair of extreme glasses that I can't read through because, well, they haven't been cleaned in a while. This is t-shirt material. I'm going to be using it to remove the oil from the fretboard, but it hasn't been used yet, so there's no oil on those. Okay, let's see what we can see. I can't tell anything, but what I'm going to do is take a picture with my shitty camera, and then if I can blow it up any to see what it says. Woohoo. And that's about all I can do with that. So now let's take a look at the oils. We can see that some of it has pretty much disappeared, so let's give it another shot of the oil and let it seep a little longer. We want to give it as much of a chance to seep in there as possible. Because my guess is this one has never been done before. The other reason I do all this is for left-handers, because so many left-handers are first off told, learn right-handed. Well, that's fine for those who can do that. I was one of the people who cannot play a right-handed guitar. I can actually play one upside down, as that was the way I played for the first couple of years of my playing times. So I can now pick up right-handers and at least make some noise and kind of keep up. I'm not very good at right-handed, but I'm not very good at left-handed. So, but it's just to try to not discourage or have the person get discouraged. So there's a good coating on that again. Let's let that sit for a bit, see how it infuses. Okay. Oh, drink. In case you don't know what that means, is I say, okay, a lot. So we're going to create a drinking game out of it. Every time I say, okay, drink. All right, let's take a look at the frets themselves. They seem to be okay. That wasn't a drinking okay. Oil is sitting on the surface pretty good. We'll give it a couple of minutes, see how that works. Tighten down the string trees because they're loose. And while we're at it, let's double check while we're waiting, check the tension of the winders. They all seem pretty good. That one's a little tighter. Take my miniature Phillips, give it a little bit of a loosen. Not much, because a little adjustment does a lot, and that is more equal. So there we go. Something else you learned today. Phillips screw right in the end of the paddle. That will tighten the tension. That one's a little loose. And you're going to have to hold the paddle. And basically what that does is there's a little nylon washer right between the paddle and the spindle that just tightens on there so that you have a little more tension. The more you know. Let's double check this. Okay, now the oil is sitting pretty much on the surface now. So we're going to be saying, good. And we will remove the rest of the oil using just a soft cloth. This here was old t-shirt material. Cut off the hems and seams because there's nylon threads in there that are a little more tough because they gotta hold everything together. You don't want to take a chance at marking the surface of your guitar. Not that this one's really worth that much to worry about, but every little bit helps. I have some rather expensive guitars that I would rather not screw with the finish. Let's check the back of the tuners, and there's no marking on them to say what make they are. Maybe you would recognize them, maybe not, but there we go. The other thing we're going to do is tighten down these trees. They seem to be fairly tight. Maybe they just, no, they were just barely loose. So we'll make sure they're snug. And then let's get our other cleaner out and do the back of the neck and the headstock. And so we'll get a little spray cleaner, get a fresh piece of rag because you don't want to get your potions mixed. And this is a cleaner, so we will just go over the wood that is not the fretboard. Always spray the cleaner on the rag, not the guitar, because we don't want the cleaner to get into the oils that were part of the fretboard absorption. Now this might take the rest of that label off the back. If it does, oh well. If it doesn't, maybe it will. No, there's some glue in there, so let's go for it and clean it up. Whatever it was it said in there, it's going to be unreadable anyways. And so now we've done just about all we can on the neck. Oiled it, cleaned it, polished the frets, filed down the edges so that they're a lot smoother than they were. Fretboard is very, very straight, considering it's a very, very cheap guitar. But there we have it. And then we've adjusted the paddles for tension, tightened down the screws of the trees, and that's it. Let's get on to the body. So now we're going to remove the pickguard screws. When you're doing this, make sure you keep a plate for the hardware and don't do the screws beside the switch or the two that are either side of the pickups. Those are well, this is an attachment to keep that from falling down in, but these are actually height adjustments. They're on springs in behind, and you tighten them, they come up, or loosen them, they come up, and the other way, the other way. So See what I did there? I picked the wrong screw, and then I readjusted that pickup out of adjustment. Let's try and keep it at least a little bit level at this point. Alright, now we've removed all the pickguard screws. We want to slowly, because there's wires attached and there's not a lot of extra wire there, so there we go. And I would really love to have at least enough room to flip this over on its back. I think we do. Sort of. Maybe not. Bit more ground wire there. And there we have it. First thing we're seeing here is that there doesn't seem to be any markings inside. I don't seem to see anything on the back of the pots, but we'll take a closer look at that as we go along. And the body's been drilled down very deep on those sides, so there's not a lot of room at the outside of the cavities there. And you might not be able to see it too well, but in the corners there's an extra deep hole on both sides that goes down deeper than the depth of the cavity, which kind of stinks. But so when you're looking at the back, there's not going to be a lot of room there. The body is not going to be extra thick. And there is a line where the pickguard meets the body, and it disappears when we wipe it off, which is good. Okay, which just basically means this guitar was not overly well kept. Okay, so this is a softer wood. I'm guessing it's probably cedar or pine, because it's not that heavy. Kinda not sure what I want to do with this one, whether I want to like relic it or something like that. The body's got a fairly good finish. It doesn't look like it hasn't been any chips around the edges or anything like that. So it was looked after at least that way. But there was a good ridge around the outer edge of the pickguard, so it didn't get a lot of cleaning either. I have a feeling this one sat somewhere. And if it had 3mm action at the 12th, as I say, it really didn't sound very well. I couldn't make it sound good because every time you fretted a string, every time you fretted a string, it went sharp because there was just way too much action. So let's take our red rag and get a little water. There tends to be a lot of dust down deep in. So let's push that down in there and see if we can bring up any of the dust. No. Okay, I don't think we're really gonna mess with anything in there. So we're just gonna wipe off the back of the pickguard cautiously because we don't want to pull on those wires. There's just a bunch of dust and dirt in there. Don't see any markings on the pickups. See on the back of the pots we've got 500K, B 500K for the volume, A 500K for the one tone, and the other tone is a 500K, but it's got solder over the A or B, whatever it was supposed to have said there. So now what I'm going to do, because I've done this before and then went, wonder what it says in there. So it's just the video, record. Okay, when you lay in the pick guard, careful to make sure that none of the wires get pinched between. We get a good solid feel. Alright, now start the screws by hand. Start the screws by hand. That will make sure that you don't cross thread or strip any of the holes. Don't use a drill to do this part. Make sure that the screws all start by hand and then sink them. Don't tighten them. And then go around and tighten them in a crisscross pattern just like you would the lug nuts on your car. Okay, so just plant them first. Just tighten them down to the spot where they are just kind of snug. Then once they're all planted, start snugging slowly. Make sure you recall how much pressure you put on. That one's stripped, so we don't want to mess with that. Actually, what we can do is the trick. So this one keeps spinning. So what we want to do is take it out. I'm going to take a toothpick. Okay, so we're going to take a toothpick. Just snip off the end. And then go find it. And was never seen again. So I'm going to do another little bit. Now we're going to try and snip it in half. Using an old set of clippers, we take a little bit of the toothpick, put it down in the hole. Try and plant it as far as we can. Take the screw, put it back in. This one, you don't have to start by hand because it was already stripped. But now, voila, it is secure. And that's how you fix a strip screw. Okay, so now we've Oh, drink. So now let's go over this with the cleaner. Go up around the body where we cleaned before, and now do the pick guard. We had enough cleaner on this rag that we don't have to add any more. And wah stinkin' la. Okay, so that's the front cleaned. Now let's roll it over. I'm just going to push it off the side so that we don't push the things down into the surface. And wipe the back. As I say, I'm looking it over and there is like no real damage marks on this one at all. It's a little scuff down there maybe. Let's see if the cleaner brings it up. Yeah, it pretty much did. Okay, let's grab the button mat and go over this a little better. Let's just see how clean it does come, because there might be a few little rub marks on it, but no gashes, no extreme gashes. And let's check it in the light. Maybe a belt buckle scratch or two. Hard to say. All right, let's open up the back. I was in here last week, but just to take a quick look. So we're going to remove the screws. Screw holes are beveled so that the head of the screws fit flush with the plate. Always make sure when you replace the plate that the bevels are out, because what will happen if you get this thing flipped over is you are going to break the guard, the cover. Those holes are beveled so the screw sits into them. You flip it over, they're not. The screw is going to break it, and there's not very much material between the hole and the edge. So the more you know. Okay, so I was in here yesterday. Oh, drink. So I was in here last week. And once again, there's a little line around where the outer edge of the cover was, and it can be cleaned off. So there was just dirt that was pushed in beside. Guess is that the cover was never been off it. So there we go. Now the tremola, we are not going to use the tremola. We're not going to use that at all, because woo-woo, wow, great, but woo-woo, you're stretching the strings, it's going to go out of tune. So we're not going to do that. So what we're going to do with this one is we're going to get some wood shakes, jam it in here so that this does not move at all. some little pieces of wood. That one will work. Okay, so what we're going to do is mark this with our handy dandy razor knife. Jam that in there. Put a score on the wood. Now we know that we want it to go outside. Take the saw and cut just beyond that there so that that piece of wood jams in there perfect. So I'm going to put you on pause, and when we get back, that's going to be a much shorter piece of wood. And there we have it. Now this will go down in, sink to pretty much flat. This will jam it even more, but it's too stinking long. So cut it in half. Jam that in and cut it off. Knife. All we have to do is just make sure that it gets beyond the cover. That's all we're trying to do, is just get it in there far enough that the tremola doesn't bend. And because we're doing it with just little chips of wood, if we ever want to make the tremola work again, well, then all we have to do is just dig that stuff out. I know it's rather red greenish, but that's all we're trying to do. It's a MacGyver. Now that's in there so that that will not move, and hence whammy override. Cover's cleaned. Bevel's up. This slot goes over that end so that you can restring it, which is what we're going to be doing shortly. Screws in by hand. Sinking them first before we snug them down, because we want to snug them down in a crisscross pattern. Okay, just remembering how tight you used the what tension you used on your thumb from the last one. And voila. Okay. Oh, drink. And there we have that. Now it is time for neck reinstall. Let's revisit the neck and see how the fretboard took to the reconditioning. And the neck did take very, very well. Okay, so now let's reattach the neck. Slides right in like a glove. We take our screws with the arrow pointing up the neck. And as I said before, starting them by hand. Make sure that the threads go properly. That one's a little tight. Is it just, no, that is a little tight. Okay. So what we'll do is start tightening them down, making sure that we get steady pressure. They're not cross-threading or anything. Okay, so we make sure that the neck is planted right against the body in all corners. Squeeze it with our hands there, and then start the screws. Because we want to make sure that the screws go into the neck. And this one will be our anchor, because we know that one's going in good. So we will make sure that it gets to the planted stage. And then do the crisscross one over here. We really want to make sure this is going in smoothly so it's not rethreading a new hole. We know that. And that's what we're really concerned with. Okay, so those are now planted, just sunk, not tightened. We take a look at the neck, make sure it's flat in all the way around, and it is. So now we will tighten down the last two screws. And then once they're all planted, we go around and tighten up each one, crisscross pattern, a little bit at a time. And all of them are secure. Now we double check the neck, make sure it's sunk. There's no gap in here, up there, around the sides. Make sure that it looks fairly flat, which it does. And voila. And while you're at it, strap pegs. Always double check them, probably more often than not, because many guitarists have had a bad day because of a strap peg. And that's it. Double check the pick guards. And there we have it. Now the next thing is restring. Restringing time. This time we're going to be using some Roto Sound Roto Pinks. R9s, electric. These are made in Britain. And comes with its own little packet of Don't Rust. And we're going to go blue. These come in just 3 different sets of colors. Blue, clear, and red. The 2 blue, the 2 regular, and the 2 red. So with the 2 blue, it's going to be go blue, clear, red, blue, clear, red. So we know that the fat blue is the first one we're looking for. Put ours aside here so we can get them when we get them. Not only that, they give you an extra high E. Holding these away from you while you unravel them so you don't get poked in the eye again. Okay, put the third E aside, not third E, third blue, and through the back, the top hole. Pulling the string now. When the spindle, the spool, is just at level with the back, you want to put your fingers right around the bridge and pull up. And you want to go about 1.5 inches so that you know that spool is sunk. Give it a little click there. We go up with an electric guitar when you have all the spindles on the same side. Go up to the one that you want. Go up past 2, and that's where you want to cut it. But before we do that, there's one thing that I forgot to do. And that is to get a deep 10mm socket. And make sure all of these spindles are good and tight. You get a deep one, you get a deep 10mm, because if you get a shallow 10mm, the spindle goes up so far through the socket that you cannot get the ratchet on the other end. I'm not even getting the ratchet out because once you get a deep 10mm, you can basically reef them hard enough to know that they are snug, because you also don't want to over tighten them either. Deep 10mm socket. Drink. Now, as we were saying, you pull the extra 1 inch and a bit past there, up through your nut, up past the second spindle, and cut the string. Everybody has their own way of doing it. This is just how I do it. Put your hands on both sides of the string when you snap it, so that the tail doesn't go flying across the room. Now, the way I do this is I find the hole, slide the tail through, leave just 1/8 of an inch sticking out, and crink. tightening. Make sure that the wire goes under the tail when it comes around, and then when you get to the other side and the string comes there, make sure you go under. You always want the string to wind down into the body of the guitar. Yes, you're going to get a little bit of buzz first off until you get everything on and tightened up. So what do we say? The next one is the white spool. Hold the strings away from you when they spring out. Grab the thicker of the two white, because that's how you know, on top of the fact that it is a wound string. Go into the second hole in the back. Aha! Almost went into the third hole. Okay. Pull the string up until the spool just disappears under the cover. Grab the string at the base, pull up until you get 1.5 to 2 inches. Crank it over the saddle right off the bat so you know if you drop it somehow. Up past the second spindle beyond what you want to do. Grab both sides of the string and cut. Me. Me. Give me an M. One of the two red ones. They always give you an extra one because if you're gonna burst one, chances are this will be the one. Okay, so now we've got all the strings on the guitar. What we want to do now is look at the spindles where the windings are on there. And now we rough tune. When I say rough tune, we're just going to bring them up to roughly where they're going to be. I'm just going to use my acoustic here. See, we're only going to rough tune. Just push down on these a bit just to make sure that we're tight around the spindles. Reef them here a bit. And then we get out the tuner. So we brought it into rough tune, wiggled them about maybe 4 or 5 different times, just to try and stretch the strings a bit. And now for the tuning. Pull on. May as well use the cord that came with it. Forgot that part. Got a free cord too. Woohoo! Now crank her up to 10 so that I know it's off. Let's wind you down here closer to the noise. So anyway, we go about it. That is it. My new Barracuda Black Strat. $100, couldn't go wrong. You know, as I say, I couldn't wind it up there because apartment building, not good. But do you think I should relic this thing? I don't know what I'm going to do with it now. It's in, as I say, there's no real marks on it. Oh, one mark right there. Now the fretboard is all done up, and you can still hear a bit of the maybe I got to polish those frets a little more yet. For $100, how can you go wrong? It's a Black Strat, and it's a Barracuda. Anyways, thanks for watching. Share, like, subscribe. Leave a comment below if you think what I should do with this now. Maybe it's going to go back up on Marketplace. If I should relic it. It's kind of hard to relic it when the thing is in pretty much mint condition. Maybe I should get a black pickguard for it. Make it into my David Gilmour Blackie. Well, we're going to leave it for about a week, and then we'll take it up again, see how the adjustments have worked on it. As I say, I adjusted the truss rod last week and the string height. We'll just have to have a look at it then, see how it looks at that point. $100 Black Strat. Like, how can you go wrong? Thanks for watching. Actually, $100 for the Strat, the amp, cord, 2 extra pick guards with 2 pickups and a volume and a tone pot. Mind you, they're on right-handed Strat pick guards, but as I say, I probably spent about $120 worth of labor on it today, just getting it back into okay shape. But anyway, we go about it. I got a black Strat. Yes, it's a Barracuda, but it's a black Strat. Thanks for watching. Share, like, subscribe. Leave a comment below if you think I should relic it or mod it out in some way. I've been thinking that I might replace the guts to my 87 Squire Strat. Maybe the guts would go good in here. Either way, thanks for watching. Share, like, subscribe. Leave a comment below. We'll catch you next time. Bye now.